My mother called me from outside the gas station, and she wasn't human. I will not name the exact coordinates or the state so that none of you decides to go there and check this with your own eyes. Believe me, it isn't worth it. Let's just say this place lies in a geographic blind spot where old maps diverge from reality and GPS devices begin to behave as if they've gone insane. This is the edge of abandoned sawmills and dense pine forests that don't look like living nature, but like an endless army of tall, crooked sentinels standing in eternal watch. My name is Derek. I'm 24. And for the past 6 months, I worked the night shift at a gas station called Shellgate. For a typical American backwater, this place is the very quintessence of hopelessness. Rusty fuel pumps moan in the wind like wounded animals, and the tiny convenience store is soaked in the smell of a cheap lemon fresh air freshener that only emphasizes the stench of old fryer grease and dampness. My shift is 8 hours in the company of buzzing fluorescent lights that flicker in rhythm with my growing anxiety. That night was different from the others. The fog came from the north suddenly, like a living creature. It didn't just crawl along the ground. It fell like a heavy, wet blanket, swallowing the asphalt and turning the world beyond the glass into an impenetrable white wall. Visibility dropped to just a few feet. I stood behind the counter, feeling the cold creep under my jacket, bringing with it the smell of ozone and some ancient, rotting pine. The hum of the old Dr. Pepper refrigerator began to sound like someone's low, guttural whisper. I tried to distract myself by counting cigarette packs, but my hands were shaking. Around 2 in the morning, the world shuddered. The lights flickered once, twice, and then went out with a quiet, dying hiss. The neon sign above the entrance crackled one last time, leaving me in absolute, vacuum-like darkness. The silence that followed was physically tangible. It pressed against my eardrums. And then, in that dead silence, the landline phone rang. An old rotary phone that no one had touched in years. Its ring tore through the space like a gunshot in an empty church. I picked up the receiver, and my palm instantly turned ice cold.
Derek, sweetheart, it's me. Please let me in. It's so cold out here. I can't see anything in this cursed fog.
The voice was warm, soft, exactly the way I had remembered it all my life. My legs gave out, and I had to lean on the checkout counter, nearly knocking over a jar of candy. It was my mother's voice. Every intonation, every familiar sigh, even the way she slightly drew out the vowels in my name, everything was identical. But my mind, paralyzed with terror, refused to believe it. My mother lived in Seattle, 1,500 miles away from this hole. She was afraid of flying, hated night drives, and absolutely could not have been here at 2 in the morning in weather like this. Mom! My voice broke into a rasp. With trembling fingers, I turned on the flashlight on my phone, aiming the pale beam at the front door.
Derek, I'm standing right behind the door. The fog, there's something in it, son. It's watching me from the trees. It's so tall, Derek. Please open the door for your mother. Remember how you were afraid of monsters under your bed when you were 5? And I always left the door slightly open so you could see a strip of light?
I slowly approached the glass storefront. At first, I saw only my pale reflection, but then the fog beyond the glass began to move. At the very edge of the flashlight's beam stood a silhouette. In the light, I saw a familiar beige coat and reddish hair, but the proportions, Oh God, they were wrong. The shoulders were far too wide. The neck seemed impossibly long, and the arms hung so low that the fingertips disappeared into the grass. The figure stood completely still, but its head was tilted at such a sharp angle that a human spine would have snapped. The silence that followed my refusal to recognize the creature as my mother was not simply an absence of sound. It was heavy like wet soil. I stood frozen to the linoleum, feeling a drop of cold sweat slowly roll down my temple, leaving a salty trail. The creature beyond the glass did not move, but I could see its ribcage, if it could be called that, expanding and contracting with a womb-like whistling sound. Suddenly, it began to move, but not toward the door. It slowly started circling the gas station along the panoramic windows, pressing its entire body against the glass. The sound was nauseating. The friction of dry coat fabric and sticky, wet flesh against the cold surface created a screech that made my teeth ache. It moved sideways, its limbs intertwining like those of a giant insect. Every time the flashlight caught its face, I noticed a new detail. The skin on its cheeks was so translucent that yellow, sharp bones were visible through it.
Derek, you were always so stubborn.
The voice in the receiver was now accompanied by a soft tapping. The creature began tracing a claw along the glass, scratching some kind of symbol or word. The screech went straight through my bones, making my brain vibrate. I smelled ozone growing stronger, mixing with the acrid scent of old gasoline that soaked my hands. The air in the store seemed to thicken, turning into an invisible jelly that made it hard to breathe. At one point, it stopped directly in front of me, separated by only an inch of reinforced glass. It pressed its huge, deformed palm against the spot where my face was on the other side. Its fingers were twice as long as mine, each with 4 joints. I saw black dirt and scraps of pine bark packed beneath its claws. It began to slowly vibrate. The entire pane of glass trembled, and the ultrasonic hum echoed inside my skull as a sharp burst of pain.
I know what you're thinking.
It whispered, and this time the sound didn't come from the speaker. It felt like it came from inside my own head.
You're thinking about how easily this glass could break. You're thinking about how your lungs would fill with fog. You always liked fog, didn't you, Derek? Remember how we walked in the park and you hid behind the trees thinking I'd never find you?
I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to push those memories away. They were too vivid, too real. I almost smelled my mother's lavender perfume. But then the stench of rot from the broken frame slammed into my nose. This was psychological probing. It was searching for a crack in my armor, testing which voice or memory would make me unlock the door. When I opened my eyes, the creature was no longer at the glass. It was on the roof. I heard a heavy impact that made the shelves of chips rattle. It began running directly above my head, and the sound, heavy, uneven, the stomp of something many-legged, completely destroyed my hope that this was just a hallucination from exhaustion. Every movement above was accompanied by the scrape of claws on metal. It was looking for an entrance. It was testing the building the same way it had tested my mind.
Derek, don't be silent. It's rude.
The voice in the receiver now sounded colder.
Remember that broken vase when you were 7? You cried so hard, hid the shards under the old rug in the living room, and said the dog did it. We always trusted each other, didn't we? Open the door. Mommy is very uncomfortable.
An icy wave passed through my body. No one, absolutely no one, could have known about that vase. The dog, Buster, died a year after that incident, and that small secret died with him. The creature beyond the glass began slowly closing the distance. Its walk was the most disgusting sight of my life. It moved its legs as if the kneecaps were bent backward, and each step was accompanied by a wet, squelching sound, like someone walking on raw meat. I frantically began barricading the front door. I shoved the heavy motor oil rack, dragged the drink refrigerator, ignoring the wild pain in my muscles. The glass was thick, reinforced, but watching the creature's long, gray, skinless fingers press against it from the other side, I felt as if I were protected by a sheet of paper.
Derek, you remember how you cried when Sam left for college? You hid his favorite cap so he couldn't leave.
The voice now came not from the phone, but directly from outside, seeping through the cracks in the frames.
You were always selfish, Derek, just as much of a coward as your father.
The creature pressed its face to the glass. In the flashlight beam, I saw that where human eyes should have been, there were two black, bottomless hollows, something pulsing deep inside them. The skin on its face was stretched so tightly it split along the cheekbones, exposing wet black muscle. It wasn't copying an appearance. It was pulling it over itself like a poorly stitched, decaying suit. I saw something moving beneath the skin of the face, like insects under a carpet. It began tapping the glass methodically with one long claw. The silence beyond the glass suddenly exploded. The creature didn't bother with the lock. It simply slammed its entire body into the upper part of the storefront. The glass, designed to withstand heavy impact, blossomed with a thick web of cracks. The blow was so powerful that dust and old paint rained from the ceiling. The smell of burnt rubber and rot flooded the store. I jumped back, knocking over the magazine rack. The creature emitted a sound I will never forget. It wasn't a scream, but the simultaneous howl of 1,000 voices, from infant crying to a death rattle. It struck again, and this time the glass gave way. With a sound like a gunshot, shards cascaded inward, carpeting the floor with glittering blades. A long, jointed limb burst through the opening. It was covered in gray slime and short, stiff spines. The clawed hand frantically groped at the barricade, knocking over oil bottles and soda cans. I saw a head pushing through the breach, that same horrifying mask of my mother, but now the mouth was torn open to the ears, revealing rows of thin, needle-like teeth. It began making sounds that mimicked a chainsaw to intimidate me. I spun around and ran toward the back room. I heard the creature forcing itself through the narrow gap, its bones grinding against the metal frame. I burst into the tiny storage room, slammed the heavy steel door shut, and slid the bolt just a fraction of a second before something massive crashed into the door from outside. The impact was so powerful it threw me against the opposite wall, smashing my head painfully against a shelf. I was trapped in a 3x3 meter box. Around me, rusty shelves, old batteries, and the stench of acidic chemicals. Outside, beyond the thin sheet of steel, madness reigned. The creature began running through the store on 4 limbs. I heard it destroying everything in its path, refrigerators bursting, plastic shelves snapping. The sounds were so loud it felt like the building was about to collapse. Then the psychological assault began. It started imitating sounds of a struggle.
Help! Someone call 911.
Shouted my manager's voice, Bob's.
Derek, it's here. Open the door, help me.
I heard the sounds of tearing fabric and crunching bones, so realistic they made me retch. But I forced myself to remember. Bob had gone fishing in another state today. This was another trap. The imitator was trying to lure me out by playing on my instincts. Then the blows against the door became slow and methodical. Each impact made the steel bend inward, forming ominous dents. Derek, I know you're in there. The voice was now my own, perfectly identical. My tone, my accent. You understand you can't hide forever, right? Sooner or later, you'll want a drink. Or sleep. We'll still be here. I curled up under the bottom shelf, hugging my knees. I covered my ears, but the voice seeped through my fingers. It began shouting my most shameful secrets, the ones I never admitted even to myself in my darkest moments. Time lost all meaning. I sat in the dark, choking on the smell of gasoline and fear, until the blows outside slowly faded, replaced by a quiet, poisonous hissing and the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor. Time stretched like thick tar. It felt as if the night would last forever. But gradually, I noticed the darkness beneath the storage room door was no longer absolute. A thin strip of light began turning a dirty gray. The scraping and impacts stopped completely. I heard a long, vibrating howl that began like a woman's scream and ended like the hum of a dying engine. Then came the sound of fast footsteps retreating toward the forest. I waited another 2 hours, terrified it was another trick. Only when the electricity came back on and the refrigerators resumed their familiar hum did I dare slide the bolt back. The store was in ruins. Shelves toppled, products mixed with dirt and some kind of black slime. Deep grooves were carved into the glass of the front door, nearly cut through by claws. I stepped outside, squinting against the bright morning light, which felt like a blessing. The air was clean, yet I still felt that metallic smell on my skin. I sat in my SUV, feeling as if I'd aged 10 years in a single night. My hands shook so badly I dropped the keys 3 times. Finally, I started the engine, and at that moment, my phone caught a signal and chirped, a voicemail notification. I pressed play, expecting to hear the police or Bob. Instead, a cheerful, unbelievably happy voice filled the speaker, my mother's.
Derek, sweetheart, hi. Surprise. I decided we've had enough of just video calls. I took some time off, hopped in the car, and oh God, this road through the forest is endless. The fog was so creepy last night, I almost drove into a ditch, but it's all clear now.
The cold I'd felt during the night returned with renewed force, paralyzing me in the seat.
I just passed the road sign that says Shellgate. I can already see your gas station. I'm right around the corner, Derek. Come out and meet your mom. I brought your favorite pastries. I missed you so much, sweetheart.
I slowly raised my eyes and looked into the rearview mirror. From the fog still lazily curling at the edge of the forest, my mother's white Toyota slowly rolled out. It was coated in gray dust and branches. The car gently stopped by the second pump. The door opened, and a woman in a familiar beige coat stepped out. She smiled and waved at me. But in the morning sunlight, I clearly saw it. Her fingers were far too long, and when she took a step toward me, her legs bent backward beneath the hem of the coat. She wasn't walking. She was jerking forward in convulsions, closing the distance with unnatural speed, while her voice from the phone speaker kept talking.
Get out of the car, Derek. Mommy's here. Let's hug. You wanted this so badly.
I slammed on the gas, flooring the pedal. Gravel sprayed from under the tires. I didn't look back, but I knew she was standing in the road, watching me with her empty black eye.